Hello everyone and welcome to the second ever Jamf Security Lounge. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a lunchtime session, so if you've got a sandwich and you want to hear about security, you're in the perfect place. My name's Aaron Webb and I work here at Jamf in the product marketing sector here of our organization looking after security. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a great session. We're focusing today on educating the workforce in the first line of defense against cyber threats, and we're joined by some fantastic guests. But before we kick off, let me give you a quick roundup of the Jamf Security Lounge and what it is, but also the fact that we've got live captions. So in your settings, please feel free, if you want to turn on the live captions, go and turn those on now so you can follow along. They are in your settings. Any questions that you have, please pop them into the comment section on the dashboard. We'll answer them throughout if we can, or if not, we'll come to the end and we'll answer any of the questions that you may have. So the Jamf Security Lounge is a fireside chat. We bring on guests. It's a great way to dive into some hot topics of security in a relaxed fashion. So today I'm joined by two fantastic guests from Cyberpilot, Michael and Tue. Tue, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Tue, and at Cyberpilot, I'm part of the learning design team, where we're tasked with following on cybersecurity trends and finding out what the latest recommendations should be aimed at the workforce, and then translating that into e-learning courses that ideally everyone should be able to follow. So kind of taking those sometimes a little technical issues and try to turn them into easily understandable advice and explanations.
Excellent. That's a great topic that you've got there to look after, taking all of that cybersecurity information and turn it into something for everyone to digest, understand, and educate them on. So lots to dive into today. Michael, would you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yes. Hi, my name is Michael Lundgaard. My title at Cyberpilot is Head of Sales towards the Swedish market. For the last 15 years, I've been working with small and medium enterprises and connected them with tech companies and finding the best solutions. For the last couple of years, it's been more and more IT security and GDPR that I'm focusing on.
Yep, hot topics certainly for everyone globally. So no matter where you're tuning in from, everyone's got cybersecurity as a focus at the moment. Obviously GDPR for Europe, but lots of other organisations around the world follow different protocols and regulations, which is easily adaptable. So we've got some great topics to dive into today. I'm going to kick it off, and if anyone's got any questions, please feel free, as I said before, to put them into the comment section. But the first one I'm going to come for you, Michael, with is, what's the most requested or popular ask for organizations in training their workforce? And what does that normally look like when someone reaches out to you?
Well, the main products we are launching and the services we are e-learning and phishing simulation. And when we're talking with customers, the main issue is that normally the IT managers, the CIOs, the people in charge of the IT security at a company, they've got limited resources and limited time. So the biggest issue we help our customer with is getting that learning out to the employees and making it a structure so it's handed out to everybody without the IT managers having to be in charge of the system all the time.
Great. And so you're kind of working with like the board level as well as IT. Like, who is it who normally reaches out to you and sort of initiates the conversation around sort of training the entire workforce?
Definitely, Aaron. Now we're talking a bit about the sales process. Normally, there's different ways of a company getting in touch with us. Either if they've been hacked, it's quite obvious. They're curious about making sure that never happens again, and they reach out to us. If a company has been that fortunate it hasn't happened before, then it's normal a decision at board level. They've made a decision that they need to improve their IT security. And then it's passed down the system, and then we get in touch with the CIOs, the IT managers, and take it from there. But it's different ways of being approached. Either you are trying to avoid something from happening, or you're trying to avoid it from happening again. And if you try to avoid it happening again, you're normally a bit faster at the decision making.
I can imagine that's quite a speedy response and rollout should someone have been breached and then have to. Yeah. Cool. So that's a great introduction there, and nice to know that you're getting sort of that conversation at the top level of organizations, because I think that's super important to drive down any change or initiative from sort of board level downwards. So that's great to hear. Tue, I've got a question for you, because obviously something Michael mentioned there about like phishing is one of the things that you focus on. Phishing is becoming more sophisticated, and how does an organisation ensure its workers stay up to date, and what type does that look like for what you offer to organisations?
Well, I think simulated phishing can definitely be a large part of it, because it really helps, showing, not telling people what could happen in a kind of safe environment. That it's kind of like a fire drill, right? But in this case, you really get the hands-on feeling of, well, what could happen if we were to be attacked. I think that's a large part of it. Of course, in our education, we try to keep up to date. And like you say, techniques are becoming more and more sophisticated. So I think in the past, there's been a lot of focus on like, oh, you have to be a critical reader of your emails. You have to spot if the sender address is wrong. You have to spot if there are weird spelling mistakes or whatever kind of maybe a little superficial warning signs. But I think what we are seeing is that in this constant arms race, cyber criminals are getting smarter and smarter. And well, sometimes you're lucky you can catch it on the superficial level, but you can't be so sure anymore. So one of the most important pieces of advice that we try to instill in people is context matters. Were you expecting this email? Does this person normally contact you this way? And we want companies ideally to instill a culture where it's okay to question that, where it's okay to reach out to someone who sent you an email, maybe internally, and ask, hey, just please confirm that this was actually you. Because that, like, impersonation like that is also a common trick that we do see. So if you can have an established practice where you just kind of reach out, maybe over phone, maybe you just go tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, was this email actually from you? Luckily, well, hopefully that can catch a lot of would-be impersonation.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of that, having that communication and being able to spot something, but don't be afraid to report it, because I think someone might think that, oh, I've clicked on it, it's about the speed of reporting or thinking about what you're doing before you're clicking on something. And as you say, it's getting more and more sophisticated now. Like we've seen phishing attempts be like very obvious that they're not from the people or the organization that you've seen, but that's getting more and more sophisticated, more and more refined in the way in which they're targeting people in order to try and like breach the system. So, and this is all e-learning format. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes, we all the teaching that we do is in e-learning format in this kind of micro-sized bytes. We like to say that ideally you should be able to take one of our modules in the span it takes to drink a cup of coffee, so people can fit it in during the workday. So it is purely online, most of what we do, which of course then should be supplemented by maybe more active, more in-person or whatever makes sense at the local company initiatives.
And if I can add on, Aaron, there's three main topics, three main reasons we're pushing out to our customers or our clients. First of all, the e-learning is providing the knowledge of how to do different things, and especially if you're a company that's growing, when you're onboarding new people, it's nice to have a system that everybody is up to date, up to speed, and they know how we do things in the company and how we do things a good way, IT security wise. The other thing is to get the right culture within a company, because one thing is knowledge, the other thing is actually how you train a company to have the right culture, how you build a strong IT security culture. And I'm talking about a culture where it's okay to do mistakes. Of course, the knowledge part is trying to avoid making mistakes, but it's obvious. We're people. We do things. Sometimes we're a bit stressed. Sometimes it's just very good phishing emails, and things happened. But if you have the right culture within the company, then you've got a very secure system of actually how to react once things have been done. And then the third part is how you document what you're doing in a company, and then that's one of the good things about our system as well, that the CIO who's the admin of our system, they can draw out reports, so they know exactly which employees who's taking which courses and how far they are security wise.
I think that's a great point that you add in there, Michael, because it's about this mindset that we're shifting the whole organization to be mindful of, because obviously cyber threats are on the rise. We're seeing that. But it's also in hand with the tools that IT are implementing. You can't just implement tools, and obviously that's great, but it might be the first chink in your armor that someone just clicks on the wrong link. So this is where it's layers of security being built up, and obviously at Jamf we offer the layers of security on the products that we offer, but the way in which you're tackling the workforce, that's another great layer that you can add into any organization. It goes into that strategy of securing the workforce, and then obviously securing the systems and the tools that they're using as well. So it's a great point there about changing mindsets.
It is. It's the same as your products, Aaron. It's not just a quick fix. It's something you need to work with every day and something you use every day. And that's, I think, one of the main points of being a customer with Cyberpilot, is that it's an ongoing process. And it's an ongoing process where you have a partner to work with to raise the security level, period, going forward.
Yeah, and I think you're right definitely in terms of all of the things that you're doing, educating the end user, exactly what we look for. Like, we focus on Apple tools. We make sure that the end user is empowered, know what they're doing, what's happening on their device through like self-service or communication tools. So it's definitely something that is mindful that the end user is not always the person who understands cybersecurity. And I suppose you get a lot of that in the training that you offer as well. So what does that training kind of look like to in terms of how does it take someone through it? Because not everyone's IT literate, or they may be just different parts of the organization. How does that look for a training session?
So one of our modules is a little package that contains, well, like I said, you should be able to complete it in a span of drinking a coffee or having a little break. So 5 to 7 minutes we like to aim for, and then of course you might go through multiple modules over time. But each of those modules, then our standard format is they contain essentially a little cartoon, a little animated story that shows off in practice, well, how could this thing we're telling you to be aware of, how might that happen? Then followed up by a simple slideshow with text and images to kind of go through and pick up the necessary knowledge. And then at the end, we like to test, have people followed along with a little quiz, a little test of like 4 to 5 questions. And when a user is enrolled onto one of our courses, they will be able to take it at their own time, at their own pace, and fit that into their workday.
I think that's a model that we go on, Michael. Sorry.
No, that's just one of the things I'd like to add on is that that's the build up of the courses, and it's built up so you learn it the best way possible, and we've got it in multiple languages. So if you're a company with different nationalities, you can press on the language you prefer to get the best learning. But when we are onboarding customers, it's a variety of companies. Some companies have a specific kind of workforce, and they need a specific kind of training. But a lot of companies, they've got different kind of workforces. They've got people at the production, they've got people at offices, they've got people on the go working as consultants, salespeople. And when we onboard a person, or customer success managers spend a lot of time figuring out which kind of level every spread of employees need in training. So we don't just do one program for the company. We do different programs within the company to make sure everybody is trained at their level.
That's great to hear. And I was going to say how the bite size, I really enjoy seeing when organizations do that, because it just drip feeds that information. It's easy to digest. Like, people are doing more with less. We're seeing that as people are sort of trying to tighten budgets in the economic climate we're in, and having to do training is sometimes a bit of a chore for people, but this is super important. And I think the way you've broken it down into bite-sized chunks is great. The fact that you even tailor that to be like for different organizations with different needs is fantastic. We see that, and why so many of our tools are tailored. We have different workflows, industry workflows for healthcare versus education, because there's different needs for using those devices. We're all connected to the world. We're all using Apple devices or tools to make our work simple, but you've got different needs. And I think that training that you're doing to tailor that is super important as well.
It is, and it's actually one of the reasons why we do things today. To be more specific, in the early days of Cyberpilot, we worked a lot with CIOs CTOs, IT managers, and the main thing is that if you're a CIO, you know how to behave, you know how to make sure you've got a high level of security. So training the specialist within the company is not our goal. Our goal is to train all the other people. So the IT department normally know what to do. And they are very good at communicating within the IT department. But when they take us aboard, it's because they want to communicate to all the other people in the company. And when you're talking IT security, the weakest link is often a thing that's talked about. And that's why you need some e-learning to all people who's got access to the IT systems within a company.
Yeah, no, this is why I've got so much admiration for you two, because you've got to take all of that technology and all that terminology and turn it into something that everyone can sort of like level set on. And I know when we was discussing about this session before, Michael, you mentioned about parking attendants. Was it a parking attendant? Obviously training those people.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Let me say a live example as a parking company who's making sure that that's taking care of a lot of parking spaces in Sweden. And they've got different levels of employees. They've got the office staff who's working with a computer, sitting with a computer almost during the whole day as we are right now. And they've got a lot of parking guards who's also got hand devices walking around across the whole country. And they need different kinds of training and different levels of training to make sure that the IT security is on a great level.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more of that as well. Like these, like the deskless workers, where they're being given a device, they're not someone who's literally office based. And I suppose that comes back to a question for you two, about you're really creating a curriculum about this, aren't you? It's a curriculum that takes everyone through that for not just your average office employee, but or the whole breadth of who might be accessing a device in the organization.
Exactly, and that's actually tying into what Michael was saying, that we don't actually provide a laid out specific curriculum, because we work with each client to tailor that to their reality, the topics that make sense for them. And that is where this bite-sized modules, that's an advantage, because you can, maybe this month we do 3 modules or we do 4 modules. Well, which 3, which 4? Okay, we'll start with some basics. Then we can dive into some topics that are more relevant for us, for example. So we've been approached, for example, by utility companies as well. Again, very much sometimes someone with deskless employees, they might have technicians who work out of a van with an iPad, for example. So, okay, well, then our catalog needs more advice on working. Well, usually when we said working remote, we meant like working from home. But no, this is a different case. We need something to cover that as well. And we try to be mindful as well when we do show these little cartoons with scenarios, to also get out of like the stereotypical generic office environment sometimes, which is a real challenge, because there's so many different kinds of workplaces out there. We can't represent all of them, but we try to show some different angles and perspectives.
And also, no, just one thing I want to add. When we take on a client and we start working with them, the level of education they get and the specific education change during time, because the goal is to get the company more secure, and the goal is that everybody within the company should be better at protecting the company. So we are in a constant dialogue, maybe not every week, but within a few months, maybe every half a year, we take a new dialogue, and then we draw out all the reports of the system to see where the company is at, maybe connecting, putting it together with a phishing simulation, so we can see the level of security in the company, and then we plan for the next 6 months. So it's an ongoing process, and it's an ongoing process to make sure that they get the right training at the right time, and hopefully getting better. That's the main goal.
Yeah, the threat landscape is ever changing. Like, if anyone missed our last session that we did for the Jamf Security Lounge, we brought on a CTO, Fabio from TrueSec. So go and check that one out if you didn't see it, about the threat landscape. And it's so hard to navigate that now. And I know that you mentioned to the utilities companies are coming to you. Are you seeing more? This is probably one for both Michael first. Are you seeing more companies come to you now with like the war in Ukraine, the fact that it's not just ground warfare, but cyber warfare, that this year, 2023, is the most number of elections the world are seeing across the globe. And that obviously means an increase in sort of like cyber attacks, criminal activity online. So are you seeing more of that shift in the last sort of like 2 years as well? People coming to you, and different types of companies, like utility companies, low hanging fruit for cyber criminals like education and healthcare?
Yes. Basically, we are growing as a company, and that's because the demand is growing. Definitely, and I think one of the main reasons how to explain it is that for a few years ago, it was cybersecurity was something that you were trying to protect your company with a firewall or antivirus or getting the right equipment. Today, everybody knows that it's not just about having the right equipment; it's about how you actually use it and getting everybody aboard. And for a few years ago, a lot of companies, especially in small and medium enterprise, they were thinking about doing something with cybersecurity. Today, they're planning on when to do it. So definitely a big shift within the last year.
Yeah, and the way people talk about it as well. I think a couple of years ago, we would maybe deliberately avoid when starting to talk to people to talk about like, oh, state-sponsored hacking or cyber warfare and stuff like that. It could be alienating and get too far away from the everyday office. And I think like current events have definitely brought that a little closer to home. And people are thinking in those kinds of patterns. And people, well, yeah, you mentioned the utility companies. We've been talking about that before. The ones we have in our client base, we know they have like heightened alert at the moment. They have kind of tightened security, and one part of that is definitely like a huge focus on cybersecurity awareness. We can see that they're coming with more demands and more questions and more asks of us as well.
I think we're seeing that as well in terms of with the economic climate as well, and the fact that budgets are being tightened, but there's some more money to spend on cybersecurity. More and more people are using their own personal devices for work as well now. We've kind of blurred those boundaries between like a work device and your home device, and you can just log into your work with your email and probably get to a lot of those things that are on your system and networks that you would have done before. So do you get many people that they're a bit more aware of the risks of like we're using a work device versus a personal device? Do you get that come up in conversation, or is it just across the board we need to protect ourselves?
Yeah, but it's definitely across the board. But I think when you're using a work device, you're a bit more conscious about that this could actually affect everybody back at the office. When you're using a private device, normally people just don't think about it. They just use the things. So definitely there's a variety there. But when we are speaking to board members of companies, it's because they want to protect the companies as both handheld devices and office labs in general.
Yeah, something that we often get. We deal with this every day, like with the BYOD and people wanting to choose their own device. Organizations trying to save money and probably shift to we're not going to replace our devices as much as we did before. Then we want that great user experience. Sometimes workers just want to be able to work, and they've got a device that's probably a bit quicker, or it's got less restrictions on it. And it's those shadow IT devices that can sometimes be the chink in the armor for some of the organizations that put products in place. But educating is the first step, as we said. That first line of defense is making sure that whatever you're doing, you're thinking about what you're doing before you click.
Educating and culture, two main things.
And that's again somewhere where we can really see a development that has happened, because we used to have a module where the recommendation we gave was don't use work devices for private purposes and don't use private devices for work purposes. And we've since taken that down because it was not nuanced enough for the reality now. A lot of places, the lines are blurring a little bit, and that the problem isn't solved by just saying, "Oh, don't use it," because you do have bring your own device policies and stuff like that. So instead, we have to accept, well, people are doing it. Well, how can we do it securely? Because it's in the interest both of companies and of employees a lot of the time.
And that's something that we really focus on as a product. So you're focused on the education side, but we've got a great BYOD offering. And if you haven't seen it, go and check out some of the stuff that we've done that we showcased at JNUC. Lots of people carry two phones, but you don't need to do that anymore. There's ways of securing the device with the work partition and the ways of securing the device with a personal partition, and that definitely comes into the fact that what we're seeing in the market and what you're being asked for in terms of education and blurring those boundaries. So if you want to check that out, reach out to us and we can share some more information on that. One thing I wanted to ask you, Michael, is that are you, from your experience, is there a particular group that's being more targeted? Like, do you see that CIOs or people with LinkedIn profiles or social profiles that a high profile person in the company are being targeted? And is it HR who are opening lots of CVs all day? And where do you kind of see like any particular target groups, or is it just generally across the board that you're seeing just any type of phishing attack? But is there any targeted specific individuals or groups of people that are more prone to being attacked?
Very good question. And normally you would think that it's normally the CIO or the head of culture and people and the HR people who's getting targeted the most. But the fact is that it's everybody, and especially when it's regards to phishing, as they're getting quite good at using IT tools. I don't know if they're using HubSpot or anything, but they're definitely working across the board, and they are trying to hit everybody. And it's not something they do and then check up tomorrow. It's something they do and then they leave it and check up maybe 6 months in the future. And to be honest, to get into a company, you just need one person to give you permission. And that's normally the person who's not an IT person and who's not working a lot with the computer. So as our suggestion is always to be as protected as possible, you need to train everybody within the company. And you need to make sure that the basic level of IT security knowledge is in placement. And you need to have the right culture. So you have actually got a game plan for what to do when things happen. But definitely it's everybody who's getting targeted, and I think the people who's getting the least mails is probably the easiest targets. That's on my account.
The ones that are not used to opening the emails, so they're not looking out for those things that because they don't deal with them every day, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. As if you're reading 52 emails a day and you get one who looks other than the rest, as you know, but if you're reading 2 emails a day and you're getting one, then it's just 3. So definitely.
52 emails would be a dream for me, Michael. That's quite. That would be.
Aaron, we're working in Scandinavia. It's a good work environment.
I was going to ask a question. That's all right. I was going to ask a question around the fact that we've got a phishing attack that happens. Like, what does that timeline look like? And it's something that I've discussed with Fabio when we was talking about the threat landscape. Phishing is just the first point that an organization then be able to access it. But what we've seen is a timeline of events, and phishing is the first point, but it might be months after that you actually see a full breach. And what's that experience like for any organizations that you've worked with that have been breached or trying to protect that from happening?
But the normal thing is that once you've clicked on a phishing email, maybe some bad code or something is installed on a computer somewhere, and then it just lays there. And then I don't know specific how people who's working with are doing phishing are working, but every month, every second month, they go through their systems, and they've got something in place that then once they've hit a target, they wait with actually unfolding that until a certain period of time. And of course, if you got something who's not supposed to be there, an open door within your company, and it's been there for 6 months, then the fact is that it's probably going to be on all your backups as well, and that's when you're really jammed. So it's again a cultural question that once you've clicked on something, instead of just hiding, then you need to have a culture within the company that you speak to your colleagues about it, get them to look at it, and maybe even contact the IT manager to make sure it's detected.
Yeah, it's that speed, I think, isn't it? It's that speed of actually how you react to something. I was discussing this with Fabio before, and I've even seen some presentations around cybersecurity from ethical hackers that it's now just not a case of that phishing attack is that one person. You might have then have those details sold on to someone else on the market. That's then another actor, another bad actor, another group is going to take over and exploit that phishing attempt. So it makes it super important that phishing is, although like quite common and quite low level in terms of the sophistication of some of the attacks, it does open up doors and the keys to the kingdom once they're into your organization. So super important.
And if something happens within the company, it's nice to know that the backup you did 2 weeks ago is good and not infiltrated. It's not nice to know that it happened a month ago. So again, it's back to the training, back to the culture, back to the game plan for when things happen.
Yeah, it's that whole strategy you were speaking about, wasn't it? And the fact like that you're saying it's driven from the top. Like this isn't just IT working in silo. This is InfoSec. This is IT. This is the whole organization coming together. And I think that's super important.
It is. And one of the things we spend a lot of energy, especially our customer success manager is spending a lot of energy with, is that once a customer is getting aboard, then it's not just a question about pressing go and then pushing out e-learning to all the employees. We make a strategy and a plan of how to sell it into the company as good as possible, because it's not just necessary to get the information and the training. As you need to buy in to why you need to do it, and we need to have a game plan for how we communicate it to the rest of the company, that protecting the company isn't the CIO's responsibility, it's everybody's responsibilities. And we can do that in different ways by maybe having a phishing simulation first, and then analyzing the result, and then based on that result, we communicate out to the whole company that because of the results, we are not where we want to be here, and now we're starting a process of actually getting there. And again, it's communication, it's culture, and it's working with the things on an everyday level that makes the difference.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. Just a reminder to everyone, if you have got questions, do put them in the chat. We're coming up. We've got the last sort of like 15 minutes or so before we wrap up. So if you've got any questions, pop them in now. What I want to do is I want to just bring it back to a bit of a roundup really of what we've spoken about already. And I would say, what are your top 2 tips? So 4 tips in total. I'm going to go 2 for 2A, 2 for Michael. What would be your top 2 tips, considering you're both different parts of the organization, have got different focus areas? 2A, what would be your top 2 tips for someone educating their workforce or looking to take this direction in their organization?
Well, I think one would be looking at something like password policy, because obviously passwords can be a huge part of the defense. I think the flaw that we most often see in passwords will be like reuse of passwords across different platforms, which kind of makes sure that, well, if you're first breached, then everything starts to fall like dominoes. So I think it's important to have a clear to understand but also realistic password policy of the company. Because if you do set too high requirements and not help people along, so you can set high requirements, but maybe offer a tool like a password manager. But if you set high requirements and just let everything be on the employee, they're going to find loopholes. They're going to find the easiest way to do it, not because they don't want to be secure, but because it can be very hard to handle if you set a requirement that every password must be randomly generated and unique and changed every second month or whatever. Well, how is anyone going to remember that? You need to help them. The other one could be, I mean, it's sort of on the same lines about policy. Just in general, IT security and data handling policy and guidelines. Make sure it's accessible. Make sure it's sort of a living document. Everyone should know where to find it if they're unsure about how to act in a situation. It shouldn't just be something that you send out an onboarding and then forget. And it needs to be realistic, because if it's set, if you're just trying to cover your own back, setting unrealistically high requirements, well, people aren't going to follow it. People need to be able to find it, understand it, be able to question it, and it needs to be what is on the paper needs to reflect what is actually practiced in the day-to-day.
Great 2 tips there. So password policy and IT security policy, and making sure that they're open and transparent and fit for end users as well, or their whole organization. That's 2 great tips. I've seen a question coming from Caroline. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But Michael, what's your top 2 tips that you would give to any organization?
Well, so my top 2 tips, the first one is definitely set the IT security training in a system. It's a bit like going to the gym. There's lots of reasons why not to do it today. But if you set it up, you do it together with other people, other companies, for instance, going to the gym with your mates. It's a lot easier to get there as often as you like to get the results you like to, instead of it's something you have to do a random time. So basically the first tip is set the training in system, so it's something that's part of your everyday life. The other part is spend time working on the culture, and I mean the IT security culture within the company, because knowledge is one thing, but the other thing is how you use that knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge is power, definitely. And I think
I've got a top 10 as well. I guess we only got time.
That's great. I love the fact that there's it's about that culture, that change in the mindset. It's about everyone in it together.
Yes.
And I think that's super important, especially as times now where, as I keep saying, budgets are tight. They are for everyone. We're seeing that globally across the world. And I think the more that everyone can pull together, everyone's in this to protect the organization, the business, through educating. And I think that's super important. So thank you both for those top 2 tips from each of you. So there's a question that's coming from Caroline. This probably may not be for you two, or Michael. You may be able to give some context to this. If not, I can definitely take this one. Have you encountered resistance from people who don't want security measures installed on their personal devices, and how do you approach that? I suppose that comes up to the question that you was answering to about how that you've seen that shift in blurring the boundaries between a work device and a personal device. But have you ever come across any of that? If not, I'm happy to take that question. That's a great one for me.
Well, no, I haven't, because when we get in the process, it's because the management level of the company wants to get better at IT security, and then they tend to fix these issues themselves.
Yeah, and again, we tend to deal more with the educating and training angle, not so much on like specific technological solutions. So that might be one for you.
That's
Aaron, maybe we're back to the part of actually how we sell into the company, why everybody needs to be protective for the company. So maybe it's that part, the beginning.
Yeah. For you, I suppose it's everyone's got to be aware of like the threat landscape, regardless of what device they're on, whether that's that personal device, that work device, and the board level are taking a broad look at that. So they want to make sure that everyone's just knowledge prepared for every device that they're on. In terms of your question, Caroline, for how that we approach that. So there's definitely an education piece there around what is possible when a piece of IT security and the right piece of IT security is put onto that personal device. There needs to be a balance between privacy and risk, and in protecting the company data and their organization. So I would recommend going and taking a look at our trusted access. We talk about this, about protecting end users, protecting the data, making sure they've got the right tools and systems in place that balances end user privacy and protecting company data. There's a great video that we've got about trusted access, about all of how tools come together, because we know that people want to pick the right tools and be empowered to use the tools that they want to for work. But also IT need to make sure that there's things are not happening and people are getting onto the things that they don't need to with a device that's not secure. So definitely go and check out trusted access. Is a model a framework that we speak to, and then our BYOD stuff that we've got. So our CEO Dean spoke about that at JNUC in September last year. He used it on his own device. We use it on our own device. Great way of segregating personal data and your corporate data on your phone. And there's nothing that a management company can do, an MDM, to see what's going on your personal device. They can't access your messages, your photos. So it's definitely an education piece. I know many people that say, I'm going to use a different phone for work and a different phone for home, and blurring the boundaries, but it's that education piece as well. So it is hard to convince people about that, but it's about educating and knowing what's possible with the tools available to you. So definitely go and check that out. No more questions coming in. Any last closing comments from you, Michael, before we sort of round up in the last few minutes?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. If anyone wants to get in touch with us, who's curious about what we do, you can go in our webpage, cyberpilot.io. We've got some free posters you can download to see what we're doing, and you can sign up for a free course, so you can take the courses yourself to see what it is. And if you want to get in contact with us, either just to hear our professional opinion on how to do things with you, or you want to get in contact with us for us to help you, you're free to pop an email on the email that's in this program.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Just in the chat there, if you look on the right hand side of your taskbar, you'll see that contact details for Michael and 28 are on the screen there. Also, for any further questions that you've got around anything that we spoke about today, or any other questions that you may have for Jamf, security.lounge@jamf.com, reach out to us. If you want to be a guest on here, reach out to us as well. We'd love to have you. So please do reach out to us. We always want to hear from people, customers, other experts in the market. So please do reach out to us if you want to join us on the Jamf Security Lounge. So I'm going to start to wrap it up now and let you know that we actually will not be here in April. We're going to have a month break from this Jamf Security Lounge. And the reason behind that is the fact that we've got two major events going on. We've got our Jamf event that's happening. I'm going to put a link to the registration document on here. So if you are interested in joining and seeing what we're going to announce, as in our sort of new product functionality and new features, on the 25th of April, we'll be having our Jamf event. So please sign up if you want to hear about anything that we've got from Jamf that will be released and things that we'll be discussing. And in that same week, from the 24th to the 27th, we will be in San Francisco at RSA. So if you are security focused and you get to travel to different events, do stop by if you're going to RSA in San Francisco. We'll be there. We'll have a stand. We've got some great sessions with partners like Okta, Google, Microsoft, Red Canary. So if you're security focused and you are heading out to San Francisco for RSA, please do reach out to us and stop by the Jamf stand. We've got Jamf experts on hand to discuss any of your security needs and management needs as well, because we manage and secure Apple at work. So do stop by. I'll drop the link on. So if you want to see a bit more about Jamf for RSA, please do reach out to us. And if you are in San Francisco and lucky enough to be there and not restricted by travel, then do come and stop by and say hello. So our next Jamf Security Lounge will be in May. Stay tuned for more details on how you can register. But I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Michael, and to A for coming on and chatting about this super important topic. If you want to know more about, obviously, compliance and how to secure and some of those things that we've spoken about in terms of the IT side, I did a webinar earlier this week on compliance for Mac and mobile. So go and check that out. It's a great supplement to what we're speaking about here. It's about getting those devices compliant, also then that educating the end user. So do reach out to us if you want more details around that, or if not, search for the security compliance webinar that we did on jamf.com. Michael, Tue, thank you so much. Thank you for giving up your lunch as well. Security and a sandwich. It's been a great session. Thank you so much for your valuable insights. And we'll speak to you all soon. So thank you so much for a great session. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you all in May.
Thank you. Take care.